Good morning and welcome to today's meeting of the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. I'm Catherine Craven, the chair from Brookline, and I'm going to call on the board members to introduce themselves. Starting with Mary Ann Stewart. Introduce yourself and where you're from.
Mary Ann Stewart. I'm in Lexington.
Thank you. Isabella.
Isabella Chamberlain, Hudson.
Thank you. Dalida.
Dalida Hasha, Worcester.
Thank you. Dr. Grant.
Christina Grant, Cambridge.
Dr. West.
Marty West from Newton.
Dr. Smitty.
Kristen Smitty, Westfield.
Vice Chair Hills.
Matt Hills from Newton.
And Secretary Tutwiler.
Morning, Pat Tutwiler, Secretary.
Thank you. I'm going to start off with public comment. Thank you for accommodating us today. I thought it was good to have public comment. First one up is Jerry Morose, who's going to be speaking of Ed Prep and Commissioner's goals.
Jerry, is it?
Hello, Jerry. Welcome.
Good morning. There was a time I had the notion that longstanding institutions vested with responsibility for developing our children were at least well-meaning, if not entirely successful. I no longer have that belief. For too long, BESE approved ed prep programs and provided licenses to educators with the full knowledge that the EPPs weren't effectively preparing our future educators, whether in the pedagogy of early literacy or in developing advanced and gifted students effectively. For decades, we remained in the dark ages. 2 years ago, this board finally discovered early literacy. Perhaps it will make a difference in the years to come. We still have ed prep programs for administrative licensure that teach nothing about gifted and talented students, and you're doing nothing on that front. Every day in this Commonwealth, there are significant numbers of children who are deliberately not served by their public schools. How do I know this? In my advocacy for advanced and gifted students who require IEPs or 504 plans and who already know the grade level content, I interact with districts all over the state. I still hear, we're doing everything the law requires. They're achieving grade level, we don't have to do anything. They'll be fine. Districts actually believe they don't need to accommodate an advanced child's disability simply because the child knows the grade level content. Because teachers, principals, special education directors, and curriculum directors refuse, the advocacy frequently rises to the level of superintendent. Yet, despite evidence of the district's own metrics, superintendents also refuse to place children in an educational program that's appropriately ambitious for them in light of their circumstances. As a board, you have obligations under the statute that you refuse to meet, despite years of appeals from the public. Have any of you really read the statute to know what you're responsible for in regard, the minimum you're responsible for in regard to gifted and talented students? It doesn't appear so. You know, the commissioner's goals often are treated like a triage. And in that triage, you don't value gifted and talented students. You never have. They've always been, oh, we'll take care of them once we solve the rest of the problems. We've actually heard that said before. You know, when the achievement gap is closed, we'll worry about that then. It's incumbent upon you as a board to follow the law, to follow the needs of students and start to serve the students who need you to represent them. BESE all the time talks about all students, something benefits all students, so we're here to educate all students, but the actions from BESE never show that. BESE constrains its Gifted and Talented Advisory Council for decades. It's time, why don't you read the Gifted and Talented Advisory Report that you got last month, starting on page 66, I believe, to see what they recommend. The recommendations are severely constrained because of the interference from BESE staff, but it's somewhere to start with. You can look at the 2019 report. Please make it a commissioner's goal for at least one commissioner in my lifetime to actually do something for gifted and advanced students. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Next up, we have Max Page and Deb McCarthy.
Okay, Max Page is in.
Good morning. You want me to begin?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Good morning. I'm Max Page, President of the Massachusetts Teachers Association. First off, I just wanted to note you have the Governor's State of the Commonwealth on your agenda, and I wanted to applaud the Governor for proposing to rein in the social media corporations who are exploiting our kids' mental health for profit. We support the cell phone bill awaiting House action, and we supported the larger one, which it is a part, which seems to bring reasonable controls to the social media industry. So we hope you all will be active in getting this through to the Governor's desk. I also applaud the Governor's overarching message that is the people, including our public servants, who make the state so successful. Commissioner Martinez, your goals should include putting that front and center, whether dealing with the stalled contract negotiations in Holyoke, the exit of schools from the empowerment zone in Springfield, and the graduation requirement debate. It is our members, the educators of the Commonwealth's 900,000 students, who have made this public education system the envy of the rest of the nation. Every part of your work should ask that question. Is this policy going to support the professional expertise of Massachusetts educators? Particularly on the graduation requirement, you need to take the full time of the Graduation Council to involve stakeholders. The end of course assessments, much beloved by the right wing and the business community and much hated by educators, parents, and students, doesn't that tell you something? Was dropped on us out of nowhere and suddenly became the centerpiece of this proposal. Slow down. Use the opportunity we gave you with the Question 2 victory to implement reforms that advance deeper learning and public schools that align with your vision of a graduate. Another goal for 2026 will be that you and this board will join our members as the vocal advocates for protecting our students and their families in the face of the lawless ICE, its violent invasion of our Commonwealth, as we have seen sort of a precursor, foreshadowing, as we have seen in Minneapolis. Thousands of our members have stood out in front of their schools, supported immigrants' rights organizations, joined neighborhood watch teams, spoken out, shown up, and spoken up again. We expect a renewed ICE invasion and terrorizing of our people. Where will you be when the new invasion of the secret police comes here with renewed efforts to kidnap our children and their families? Finally, a goal for 2026 for you, Commissioner, and for you, board members, must be to be passionate advocates for the funds to address the fiscal crisis in our schools. The governor's budget comes out tomorrow. The fair share funds in $3 billion, there's $1 billion in excess from last year, must be spent to protect our public schools and colleges. Will you be the vocal advocates if it is not? My union spent $15 million of member dues to secure one of the most important victories of this Commonwealth in decades, when we won the passage of the Fair Share Amendment. And 1,100 elected leaders from across the state signed a letter to the legislature calling on them to address the fiscal crisis that is leading to layoffs in schools across the Commonwealth. Will you be part of the solution? I invite you to join us in making sure education gets its fair share, and the rest of the budget. And with all due respect for the rest of the work this board and the department does, is there a more important job that you have than making sure our young people have the professional educators and supports they need to support them in learning and in caring for their mental health and social development? That seems to me absolutely the core of what you should all be doing. And I appreciate your efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we're going to call on Deb McCarthy.
Deb McCarthy is in.
Hello there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Let me begin. Good morning and thank you. I speak to you this morning as an educator about agenda item number 4 and to offer input around systems of assessment that can be models for success, or more often than not, tools to maintain our systems of oppression patriarchy, and the power of privilege. According to the dictionary, the origin of the word assess is rooted in making an official valuation of property, which by the 19th century shifted slightly to produce a new meaning around the act of making a judgment. I believe that when we assess and make judgments, we must do so with the answers to the following questions in mind. Who has been given the power to assess? Who is being served by the assessment? And what privileges are sustained? As an educator, assessment was part of my daily practice. And every semester, my students made me report cards and assess my performance so that I could become the educator that they deserved. Not only did their voice matter, theirs was a voice that drove my best practices. Assessment wasn't a tool of standardization. Assessment was a tool for providing individual instruction to all learners. Assessment was about moving forward for the learner and not about sustaining systems of privilege. By flipping the power dynamics of the assessment, I was able to create engagement, investment, and accountability for the learner. I would like to suggest to this board a similar mindset. In the goals for the commissioner this spring, it states, continue strengthening collaborative relationships with superintendents, school leaders, community, and parent organizations. While I generally believe that the omission of the word educators is an oversight, I also know that the voice of the educator as a stakeholder at times has been silenced, and nowhere more noticeable than the composition of this board, a board that has a student rep, a parent rep, but not an educator rep. Representation matters, and if we aren't included, we can't help but to feel excluded. If an educator had a voice in this board, they would be able to use their voice today to articulate the number one goal for the commission this spring should be the goal to address the fiscal crisis that is impacting every community. Your educators have been sounding the alarm for several years around the underfunding, under-resourcing, and lack of services to educate the whole child. Our schools are not safe spaces. We cannot continue to measure achievement gaps with the data of a score. Achievement gaps are opportunity gaps, and until we measure our commitment to providing the wraparound services that are found in the community school model, we are simply continuing to measure that which matters least. When schools are safe and welcoming, attendance is not a concern. And when educators are invited to these spaces as major stakeholders, together we are thought partners and we develop the schools all communities deserve. Thank you for your time and your respect.
Thank you, Deb.
Thank you.
Next up, I'd like to call on Lisa Lazar, Executive Director of Education, Educators for Excellence, Massachusetts.
Lisa Lazar is now in the meeting.
You can go ahead, Lisa, Ms. Lazar.
Thank you. Dear members of the Board of Education, my name is Lisa Lazar, and I'm the Executive Director of Educators for Excellence, Massachusetts, a teacher-led organization working to ensure all students have access to an excellent, equitable education by elevating educator voice in policy and practice. I'm here on behalf of classroom teachers across the Commonwealth and the Massachusetts Educator Collective for Change, educators shaping policy based on what they see every day. Graduation requirements are not paperwork. They are not technical standards. They are a promise we make to children and families that if you show up, if you do what we ask of you, the system will prepare you for the world beyond its doors. Right now, for many families in Massachusetts, showing up to school is not easy and it is not safe. In Black and Brown communities across the Commonwealth, school attendance has become an act of courage. Children are navigating fear, instability, and surveillance. Families are making daily calculations about safety, visibility, and belonging. Some students are afraid to walk to school, some parents are afraid to let them go. And yet the overwhelming majority of them come anyway, because education is a life-changing pathway to dignity, stability, and opportunity. If students are willing to come to school in a world that questions whether they belong, if they are coming despite fear, despite uncertainty, despite real risk, then it's our duty to give them an education worth coming for, worth fighting for, worth trusting. This is why graduation requirements matter. Without clear, meaningful standards, we are being negligent. We're asking children to invest their time, their energy, and in some cases, their safety, without guaranteeing that they will leave with the skills they need to survive and succeed. Educators see this tension every day. Teachers across Massachusetts are clear. Students should graduate only when they have demonstrated mastery of essential skills, not because teachers want to exclude students, but because they want to see them succeed in learning and in life. Teachers are not calling for punishment, they're calling for preparation for all students. In an Educators for Excellence Massachusetts statewide survey, the majority of educators affirm that students should demonstrate proficiency before graduating and that graduation should reflect learning over time. Teachers want high expectations because they understand what happens when a student are passed forward without the tools they need. It's students, not systems, who pay the price. This is not the world of 20 or 30 years ago. The margin for error is smaller. The cost of undereducation is higher, and the consequences fall hardest on the students who already face the greatest barriers. High standards are not the opposite of equity, they are the prerequisite for it. Let me say that again. High standards are not the opposite of equity. They are a prerequisite for it. At its core, this conversation is not about policy design, it is about integrity. If we're going to ask children to keep coming to school and their families to keep trusting us, to keep believing in education, then we must ensure that graduation means something real, not symbolic, not aspirational, real. Our students deserve nothing less. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lazar. Now, next up, I'd like to call Ben Tobin.
Mr. Tobin is in the meeting now.
Thank you, Mr. Tobin. You can go ahead.
Okay. So I guess my public comment really has to do with the fairness of the due process. I work with families as an advocate, and I'm also a special educator. So I've seen a lot of these things play out. And especially lately, I've been noticing a trend of the sort of district legal machine being used against families in a way that is very concerning and designed to chill advocacy, to basically ensure that parents aren't able to access their rights. And I have reached out about a rule change for having the BSEA actually ensuring the field is actually a level playing field for families, because they are supposed to be able to go there to assert their rights. PRS often does not even really look at these complaints very thoroughly when they come to light, and there are kids, especially kids with dyslexia and other SLD disabilities, who are not able to either be found under child find to get an IEP in the first place, or when they do have an IEP and there's an issue, there's really nowhere to go for them. And I've noticed it just increasing more and more as an advocate, and also working in the schools. More and more of an attitude that parents' input is not being addressed or even included, rejected portions of IEPs going unaddressed. And as far as going anywhere, reaching out, I know for some of the people I'm working with, I've reached out to hundreds of people trying to find solutions, and there really is nothing you can do. And when a family who is not low income enough to access free legal services or wealthy enough to pay $400 an hour for a lawyer, when you're up against a multi-million-dollar law firm that's being funded by taxpayers, basically, that's not an even fight. And it shouldn't even really be a fight in the first place in a lot of these situations, when really basic things are sort of being looked at. Just from like basic eligibility, basic reading services, math services. Parents shouldn't have to be put in a position of spending what most lawyers tell me is about $50,000 at minimum to go to the BSEA to resolve simple problems. But that's what a lot of families are having to deal with, and a lot of people move if they can. Some people move multiple times to escape from certain situations. There's definitely a culture of retaliation that goes unaddressed, and that's true for staff as well. I've experienced that as a staff member, just trying to do child find. I was told even in one case, we're identifying too many white kids, so we can't identify that kid. That was the wildest one that I heard. But you know, there's a culture of retaliation. People don't talk about it because more retaliation will follow. So I'm hoping there could be solutions towards making this process, when there are issues, fairer, and also having just access points for parents to be able, and caregivers in general, to be able to have their issues heard fairly and addressed in a timely manner. Because it also takes a very long time to go through due process, and PRS takes 60 days, and then additional time can be ordered. And I've also seen that PRS orders aren't always enforced, which leads to more having to file OCR, which OCR is in limbo, OSEP is in limbo at the federal level. And given the lack of federal consistency at the moment, having state level solutions is even more vital to ensuring parent rights, student rights, and ensuring that students with disabilities are getting the things that they're entitled to, morally, ethically, and in all other ways. And that is it.
Thank you very much for coming in, Ben. Next up, I have Ron Noble.
Mr. Noble is in the meeting.
Okay, Mr. Noble, you have 3 minutes. You go right ahead.
Thank you, Chair Craven, Secretary Tutwiler, Commissioner Martinez, and members of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all today. My name is Ron Noble, and I'm the Chief of Teacher Prep for the National Council on Teacher Quality, known as NCTQ. NCTQ is a proud member of the Mass Reads Literacy Coalition, which is focused on ensuring all children in Massachusetts can read. We are supporting the Right to Read Act that's now under consideration by the Senate. The act will help the board and the department ensure that all school districts provide their teachers with high-quality reading instructional materials and the aligned professional development that educators need to well implement them. I want to start by applauding the department for the strategies it has used to support districts to implement high-quality instructional materials to date. The Curate project, for example, brings in teacher voice to the process of identifying strong instructional materials. Apple Seeds provides a free foundational skills curriculum for any district to pick up and use. The popular open access professional learning opportunities that the department has stood up across the state have been really well received by educators and school leaders. And the efforts to hold teacher preparation programs accountable for teaching evidence-based early literacy instruction make it less likely that districts will have to spend dollars on professional development to correct poor preparation. Unfortunately, the incentive-laden approach that BESE has taken isn't enough. There are still thousands of children in Massachusetts being taught to read using debunked approaches. And according to a recent RAND teacher survey, just 28% of Massachusetts teachers report having access to high-quality instructional materials. And that's where the need for the Right to Read Act comes in to serve as a backstop for both the board and the department. Critics of the act generally have two main concerns that they voice. First is a worry that the law would encroach on local control and favor a one-size-fits-all approach. And to that, I just say taking bad options off the table is not the same as constraining choice to a single good option. The Right to Read Act will provide a level of consumer protection for students against low-quality, misaligned curricula. The second concern that we often hear is that the Right to Read Act represents an unfunded mandate. However, to that we say providing students with high-quality instructional materials is and always has been a core responsibility of schools. And that aside, this is another area where the department's support of districts has been tremendous. Since mid-2019, BESE has issued a total of 36 competitive grants totaling over $72 million that could have supported adoption and implementation of high-quality reading instructional materials. These grants are in addition to federal entitlement grants and the historic increases to Chapter 70 funds that districts have received in accordance with the Student Opportunity Act. Some districts have been really strategic in tapping into these grants, and others have not taken DESE up on the opportunities. The leaders in New Bedford and Lynn have used these grants to bring in an additional $3 million in funding. 9 other districts, including several other districts supporting gateway cities, were awarded more than $1 million in these grant funds. Yet many other districts have let these opportunities pass them by. Boston, for example, was awarded just 2 of these grants for a total of just $67,000, which is less than a quarter of the grant funds earned by Nantucket. Lawrence was awarded just one $8,000 grant. Now, to be fair, not every school district was eligible for every one of these grants, but it's clear that districts that submitted quality applications for multiple opportunities took in enough funding to make significant progress on curriculum adoption and the aligned professional learning needed. Thanks to the department's efforts, districts with leaders who wanted to make the transition to high-quality reading instructional materials have had the time, information, and means to do so. Unfortunately, there are so many districts denying teachers and their students access to these materials. When the Right to Read Act passes, I hope the board and DESE will seize the opportunity to make scientifically based reading instruction a reality for all of our students. I will be sharing with the board this breakdown of the 36 grants we've identified, as well as the allocations to each district from those grants. And hope you find this information useful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Noble. And our final public commenter is Karis McLaughlin.
Taking a moment to connect. It still says joining.
Yeah, I'm not, we can keep trying, Chair Craven. Not sure, might be some technical issues.
Okay.
Trying to move Karis over.
I'm not sure why she's not able to get in.
Chair, we can keep an eye on it, and if we're able to move her over, I could let you know, if that's okay.
Okay. Okay, very good. Okay, so we're going to move to the regular agenda. I'm going to move to the secretary since I have no comments for this meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I will make a concerted effort to keep my comments brief. I want to begin by sharing something that I frequently say when I have the opportunity to offer comments, and that is this. One of the true highlights of this role is the opportunity to spend time in communities with students, families, and educators. Last week, that joy took the form of surprising this year's School Counselor of the Year. And let me tell you, how they managed to keep that a secret and to the moment of that announcement is really impressive. So shouts out to Bob Bardwell. By way of very brief background, I grew up in a school counselor's home. My mother spent many years counseling in both the community college level and high school settings before becoming a professor of education. And from her and my own time in working in schools, I learned that counselors do far more than guide academic choices or help students plan for what's next. They really shape the heartbeat of a school. They ensure that schools are not just places where students learn to read, write, and figure, but places where they feel safe, supported, seen, and like they truly belong. During the surprise visit, we all walked into a community assembly that this year's recipient was leading, and it didn't take more than a moment to understand why he was selected for the honor. His connection with students, the calm, joyful tone of the room, the sense of belonging that he fostered, all of this was on full display. So this morning, I want to again congratulate Mr. Henry Wan, school counselor at Harrington Elementary School in Lexington, a well-deserved recognition for someone who embodies the very best of this profession. As has already been mentioned, last Thursday night, Governor Healy delivered the State of the Commonwealth address. Perhaps it's my bias, but I declare that education took center stage among other important topics. The governor reaffirmed her commitment to transforming early literacy, celebrated the rapid growth in high school pathway participation, and announced a bold goal of exponentially expanding early college participation. All of this is really excited, and all of it will undoubtedly have impact. And even though I know that we're in a pre-K to 12 and adult education space right now, I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight two developments in early education that will significantly influence the years that follow. Over the past 2.5 years, we've added nearly 20,000 new seats in early education, and we're on track toward universal access for pre-K beginning in gateway communities, groundwork that we expect to complete this calendar year. This research is crystal clear and stacked taller than I am. Early childhood experiences have a profound effect on readiness for kindergarten and beyond. In all, we're working to establish a foundation at each critical stage in education that brings us a bit closer to the point in all of this, to create conditions for all students to maximize their potential and realize their dreams. I will leave it there, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Moving on to the commissioner.
Thank you, Secretary Tutwiler, for your comments. And again, thank you, board members, for navigating through the weather. One of the things I enjoy, just like the Secretary said, is just going out and just meeting and visiting our schools. This has always been a highlight of my week. Since last we met, I visited Barnstable High School, where I visited with teachers and students who were excited to share the school's diverse educational offerings in the arts, world languages, and science. I also spent time at Cape Cod Regional Tech High School in Harwich, where I actually put on a jumpsuit and became a learner, while the students taught me best practices in heating, ventilation, and the air conditioning program. By the way, board members, there is a video that eventually you'll get that just shows me doing all of this. I also had the honor to join and was joined by Secretary Tutwiler to recognize 63 schools of recognition during a ceremony at the State House. There's a wonderful picture with everybody on the stairwell. These schools were recognized. The schools that were recognized included 55 schools of recognition identified through the state accountability system for demonstrating high achievement, significant improvement, and/or high growth. We also had 6 national Blue Ribbon nominees that DESE nominated for the prestigious national award. Of course, this was done right before the U.S. Department of Education discontinued the program, but regardless, we still have 6 amazing schools that we have as nominees. And we also had 2 National Elementary and Secondary Act distinguished schools. These are schools that DESE nominated through the National Association of SEEA, the State Program Administrators, for their positive educational advances in academic achievement. It was a pleasure to celebrate these 63 schools and recognize the work of the teachers, students, and families as they prepare for students for lifelong learning. And board members, it was great. We had our state legislators there. There was plenty of pictures. And like I said, there's a wonderful picture where everybody's on the stairwell that I hope everybody's got a chance to see. Next item, I just want to give you an update on our Lawrence Public Schools receivership. So really what we're doing right now is just working with the Lawrence Public Schools to help them become really, going back to a self-governing board. We decided to change the district receiver to a single individual instead of a board. So prior to me coming, board members, we had 2 different boards. It was a little confusing. And so now we have one board, and then we will have one, and then we'll have one receiver as we're transitioning to that one board. So effective January 29, 2026, I'm appointing Lauren Wu, our Deputy Commissioner, to be the receiver. And then our Superintendent, Ralph Carrero, will continue to have the role and responsibilities of superintendent and will report to Receiver Wu. Receiver Wu will then supervise Superintendent Carrero and the implementation of the district's turnaround plan and provide a direction on a capacity building plan for the school committee. So in other words, we're really starting out we'll be training the board. We have 3 elected board members, 3 appointed board members, and the mayor. I've met with all of them. They're all excited. We've also partnered with our state legislators. So we'll be training the board and getting them involved, for example, in the budget, and slowly, having them slowly take over the school district. This change is designed to make it easier for the receiver to work efficiently with the new Lawrence School Committee and to support a thoughtful and phased-in transition. Last week, we also announced that 84 additional schools have been selected to receive free high-dosage early literacy tutoring from February through June of 2026. This brings the total of participating schools to 356 statewide. This expansion represents $3.9 million funding and is part of the $25 million fair share investment that's already supporting early literacy tutoring in 272 schools across Massachusetts. High dosage tutoring, as we know, it provides one-on-one or small group instruction multiple times per week for at least 10 weeks, helping students in grades K to 3 build foundational reading skills. First grade students are the priority for this initiative, as well as first grade is a crucial year to solidify early reading skills. Schools receive tutors at no cost to the school or student, with tutoring offered in flexible models, including in-person and virtual formats, before, during, and after the school day. BESE has selected qualified tutoring providers to partner with schools, complementing districts' use of high-quality early literacy curricula with additional targeted support for students. Priority was given to schools and districts demonstrating a clear need for English language arts and literacy support and a commitment to evidence-based early literacy practices, including the use of a high-quality early literacy instructional model. I want to thank our administration, the Hilly School Administration, for their continued investment in early literacy as part of their comprehensive strategy to improve literacy outcomes across Massachusetts. And then this week, we also launched our external advisory groups to really refine the state's graduation council interim recommendations and inform the implementation of planning. These are, board members, our new graduation recommendations. The advisory groups bring together practitioners from across Massachusetts representing small and large districts, rural and urban communities to capture diverse perspectives and on-the-ground expertise as we develop the final report for the governor in June. The secretary and I have been really clear that now that we have the recommendations, we are going to be really looking at how we best implement them with the voice of the field, with the voice of our practitioners. These groups will help us translate the council's vision into practical, actionable recommendations that work for districts of all types. In the coming weeks, we will launch a statewide public input process to gather feedback from educators, families, and students and community members across the Commonwealth. This input will be critical in shaping our final recommendations to ensure that they reflect the needs and priorities of all stakeholders. Lastly, in the agenda, we did have one more item highlighting the artwork we have in the boardroom. We'll celebrate that work in February when we're all together in person. And those are my comments, Board Chair, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Can I ask one follow-up question to the commissioner?
Sure.
The number of schools that you mentioned that are getting funding and for high dosage tutoring, I'm sure every school has some number of students who could use it, but if you were to kind of just think of tiering, kind of what are the schools that the number of schools that really you could move the needle significantly, how many is that, and is the barrier, is the impediment to getting there financial resources or kind of operational, finding people, being able to train people? So
yeah, it's a great question, board member. So I think we're still early in this initiative for literacy. So right now, we're trying to do two things. One is we're trying to promote just best practices. So, the schools that are actually receiving the resources already have structures in place that not only are providing to help support students with the tutoring, but also are actually implementing either high quality curriculum or strong evidence practices. As we heard earlier in the public comment, we still have a ways to go with many of our districts implementing these policies. So this is a good beginning, and really for us, it's a way to gather evidence to really show what is possible. And we're also working with the districts on really how to develop the structures. I know when I implemented high quality tutoring in my former district, it took us a couple of years to build the capacity. Eventually, we were able to get there. So part of this is a capacity building. I do think right now it's still early. This is more of a long-term strategy, and we are going to need more resources, which the governor has already put in for next year. So I think we're going to continue to expand this. And then, of course, this will be part of the strategies, as you know, as part of my goals of working with some of our schools that are struggling the most and making sure we leverage these types of resources.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to move on to the acceptance of the minutes, approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any changes or discussion points before I go for the roll call vote? Hearing none. Helene, would you please call the roll?
Okay, I'd be happy to. I'll call in alphabetical order by last name. Member Chamberlain,
Yes.
Member Fisher,
Yes.
Member Grant,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hills,
Yes.
Member Mohammed,
Yes.
Member Hasha,
Yes.
Member Smitty,
Yes.
Member Stewart,
Aye.
Member West,
Yes.
Chair Craven,
Yes.
and Secretary Tutwiler.
Yes.
Unanimous vote, the motion passes.
Thank you so much, Helene. Moving on to agenda item number 1, educator preparation program approval and accelerated early literacy program reviews, an update and discussion. Take it away, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I would like to turn our first agenda item on the educator preparation program approval and accelerated early literacy program reviews. Board members requested more information around this topic, and it is an important piece of a larger conversation. In a larger conversation, the board will engage in around our teacher prep programs and pathway to licensure in Massachusetts. I'm excited to welcome our DESE team to be able to present an overview of the information to the board and to invite discussion, questions, and feedback. We have Erin Hashimoto Martel, our Senior Associate of Teaching and Learning, as well as Claire Abbott, Director of Educational Effectiveness, and Shaban Allen, our Literacy Program Coordinator. Team, please take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Good morning, board members, secretary. I'm Erin Hashimoto Martel. I'm the Senior Associate Commissioner of the Teaching and Learning Unit here at the department. And we are excited to talk to you today about educator preparation in Massachusetts. I'm joined with my colleagues, Claire Abbott. She's the Director of the Office of Educator Effectiveness, which oversees our educator preparation programs in Massachusetts. Unfortunately, due to some illness, Siobhan Allen is not able to join us today, but she is, to give her credit for the work that she leads. She oversees the early literacy ed prep review work, which you'll learn more about this morning. So what we have for you today is we're going to provide a high-level overview of the educator preparation review and approval process in Massachusetts. This is good timing as we've kind of just entered into a new cycle of reviews. We will include a summary of the process that we use as an agency that we oversee, as well as spotlight on the accelerated program reviews for the new literacy related licensure program reviews that are currently underway. We'll have plenty of time for questions and discussion at the end, since I know this is a topic of interest right now, given the focus on strengthening and diversifying our teacher pipeline and the priority area of early literacy. And with that, I will pass it over to Claire.
Thank you, Erin. And my name is Claire Abbott. I am the Director of the Office of Educator Effectiveness. I am borrowing Helene's laptop, so don't let the name on the bottom of your screen fool you. So thank you, Helene, for letting me jump in here.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm really excited about bringing this topic to you all today, and I'm actually just going to jump in right away with an overview of Ed Prep review and approval and share a bit of context first. So right now in Massachusetts, there are 62 approved educator preparation providers.
Sorry, we're just not getting you on the video. I don't know, Brian, my video's on. Sorry, Claire, didn't mean to interrupt you.
Want me to keep going?
Trying it.
Oh, I can see. Hold on.
Yeah, why don't we pause just a second,
All
see
right,
if we
we'll
can figure
pause.
it out so you're not distracted. Brian, maybe it's because we're sharing my screen.
Oh, is that why?
Huh, okay. Oh, there it is.
Oh, are we
No, it's
here
showing
now?
up.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian. All right. I'm going to start with a bit of context first. So in Massachusetts right now, there are 62 approved educator preparation providers, or what we call sponsoring organizations. These sponsoring organizations include traditional colleges and universities offering both baccalaureate and post-baccalaureate licensure programs, as well as non-degree and alternative preparation providers like Teach Western Mass or Boston Teacher Residency. Together, they offer over 1,200 individual licensure programs, and they graduate around 4,300 completers every year. They're relatively dispersed throughout the state with clusters predominantly in our Boston, Worcester, and Springfield metro areas. In terms of our oversight of educator preparation in Massachusetts, the Commissioner has the authority to authorize, review, and approve all sponsoring organizations, as well as individual licensure programs. The expectations for review and approval are outlined in regulation, and our guidelines for educator preparation program approval describe the specific requirements and processes that we follow. We do not outsource these reviews to third-party organizations or accrediting bodies, as some other states do. We do it all in-house, and I'll explain a little bit more about why this is in a few moments. What's also somewhat unique to Massachusetts is the expectation for all sponsoring organizations are that they remain the same, regardless of their size or type, or whether it is a traditional or an alternative prep provider. The expectation is that any institution in a position to endorse a candidate for licensure in Massachusetts is preparing that candidate in accordance with the same rigorous requirements as any other institution. Once approved to operate in Massachusetts, a sponsoring organization and its licensure programs undergo a formal review on a regular basis, which is typically every 7 years, but will vary based on its approval status. So given this authority and responsibility, it's incumbent upon us to design and implement a review process that is meaningful and impactful. As an agency with sole responsibility to review and approve sponsoring organizations, we have a clear North Star that we strive to align all of our efforts around, that all aspiring educators are prepared to be effective, using evidence-based practices, including culturally and linguistically sustaining practices that well serve all students in Massachusetts, particularly those from systemically marginalized groups and communities, such that all students have equitable opportunities to excel in all content areas across all grades. So how do we do this? Well, almost a decade ago, we launched a rather significant overhaul of our expectations and our review processes for sponsoring organizations. The goal was to ensure that all educators are prepared to be effective on day one of employment. And this meant making sure that they were prepared and trained in the very subjects and pedagogies that we expect of them once in the classroom. Prior to this point, we had two separate sets of content and pedagogical standards, one for educator preparation and one for pre-K-12 schools and districts. And we did not have a consistent way to evaluate teacher candidate readiness for licensure beyond the MTEL. The result was wide variation in quality and approach across sponsoring organizations, with new teachers entering the classroom with widely different skills and not necessarily aligned to what districts needed. So we set about realigning all of the requirements for educator preparation in Massachusetts to be consistent and to mirror the same requirements for educator employment in our pre-K-12 schools and classrooms. Here, you can see what is now a direct relationship between the preparation of educators in Massachusetts and the expectations we have for them once in the classroom. Starting with content knowledge, our licensure assessments, which include the MTEL and its approved alternatives, assess aspiring teachers' functional content knowledge outlined in the relevant Massachusetts curriculum framework, and the subject matter knowledge that aspiring teachers must demonstrate by the end of their prep program is also defined by the curriculum frameworks that they seek to teach. So if you're looking to become a high school math teacher, your prep program is required to ensure that you have the mathematical content knowledge and the related skills needed to well teach those grade-specific mathematical standards from 6th grade all the way through high school. Moving on to pedagogy, the same through line from preparation to employment exists. The professional standards for teachers, which define the expected pedagogical skills for aspiring teachers, are now the same as the Massachusetts Standards for Effective Practice, which is the state's definition of effective teaching. We also developed a statewide performance assessment for all initial licensure candidates in Massachusetts called the Candidate Assessment of Performance, or CAP, and that mirrors the Model Educator Evaluation Framework that all in-service teachers follow. So overall, this alignment between what you're prepared on and what you're expected to demonstrate once teaching ensures that our sponsoring organizations are truly preparing people to enter a Massachusetts classroom ready to effectively teach all students on day one. So how do we measure this through our review process? And how do we hold sponsoring organizations accountable to these expectations? When we go into a sponsoring organization to review their licensure programs, we look at the practices across 6 domains: instruction, continuous improvement, candidate experiences, partnerships, field-based experiences, and the organization. The criteria for each are very outcomes focused. They describe expectations, but they are not prescriptive of an organization's approach to that expectation. For example, in the instruction domain, we are looking for evidence that candidates are receiving education in effective, evidence-based instruction in the relevant subject matter and the pedagogical skills just outlined, as measured by the alignment of their course of study to our state requirements, our candidate assessment of performance, and survey data. We do not prescribe how a program may design its course of study, but we expect that they are aligned to those instructional standards. Similarly, when we evaluate the field-based experiences domain, for example, we expect to see that all candidates are engaging in high-quality school-based clinical experiences that prepare them to be effective educators for all students. Individual programs may offer different types of field-based experiences to candidates, but the goal is to ensure that all candidates have clinical placements in diverse schools and classrooms that support their skill development in that licensure area. I'm not going to go into further detail on the other domains right now, but will simply underscore that the ways in which we evaluate the quality of these domains prioritizes evidence of impact on the candidate, the district, and the K-12 students served, which brings me to the review process itself. So the process unfolds over 4 phases. During the launch and inquiry phases, we gather information on program design, courses of study, data on licensure and employment, performance assessments, and other key programmatic characteristics. We also conduct focus groups, interviews, and surveys with stakeholder groups, including faculty, students, completers, partner schools and districts, and program staff. After analyzing all of this information, we may request additional information from a sponsoring organization if we have any questions or if there are any gaps, and that ensures that all of our programs have ample opportunity to demonstrate alignment to our expectations. But a critical piece of this process is the emphasis on outcomes and impact. Are candidates completing their programs and getting hired? Do they feel prepared to meet the needs of all students? Do hiring principals see them as effective? Examples of this type of evidence include candidate and completer experience data, principal survey data, hiring and retention data, and many other measures of impact. At the conclusion of a review, a sponsoring organization will receive one of 5 approval designations: approved with distinction, approved, approved with conditions, probationary approval, or not approved. Sponsoring organizations that are approved or approved with distinction will hold that approval status for up to 7 years. Organizations on conditional approval also receive a 7-year approval term, but they are required to develop an improvement plan and notify the department annually on progress towards any findings. Any conditions may be removed once satisfied, which allows an organization to move up into full approval. Organizations on probation are much more closely monitored, with follow-up reviews every 1 to 3 years, depending on the severity of the findings. They are also unable to increase enrollment and must publicize their approval status to current and future candidates. We put these monitoring and accountability practices in place to ensure that organizations take immediate action to address findings, but we also provide significant support and guidance along the way. Our goal is not to close organizations, but to strengthen them so that they can well serve as many aspiring educators as possible. So you can see here the results of our reviews over the last 7-year cycle. Between 2015 and 2022, there were 96 sponsoring organizations that were scheduled to be reviewed. 51 of those were fully approved or approved with distinction. 16 of them were approved with conditions or placed on probationary approval, and 9 of those would move into full approval within 3 years, and 7 would remain on conditional approval. Interestingly, although we did not directly close any organizations through a not approved designation, 29 organizations elected to expire, either leading up to or during the review process itself. Overall, we believe that these results indicate that our review process continues to balance the expectation of improved performance evaluation ratings and have a more positive effect on student outcomes. Individual domain ratings for the partnerships domain and the field-based experiences domain seem particularly predictive of these outcomes. Before I transition to our other topic, I just want to note that all of this information is available on our educator preparation website, including workbooks, guidelines, and other resources and supports for sponsoring organizations that really unpack the formal review process. I'm willing to just jump right into our spotlight and then open it up for discussion if that makes sense for everyone.
Are there any questions, though? This is great. Are there any questions before we jump into that part from the board members?
I have a quick question, Catherine.
Sure.
You have, and thank you for the presentation, Claire and Aaron. You have at the back of the presentation, there was a slide kind of accelerated, kind of your accelerated program for review over the next 4 years. Curious, the same type of question I asked to the commissioner earlier, is that 4-year accelerated timeline, is that kind of, is it 4 instead of 3 or 2 because of your constraints, operational constraints, or is it funding available to do it? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with 4. I just look at something like this for literacy and say, the more that you can do, the sooner the better if you have the capability, if there's funding. So just trying to understand what the constraint is.
So the accelerated reviews are specific to our literacy licensure programs. What I just described was what we call our formal review, which is what we conduct for entire sponsoring organizations, which have multiple licensure programs. For our early literacy work, we are accelerating program-specific reviews, and there are over 170 literacy-specific programs in the state. Normally, those programs would be reviewed as part of that larger formal review process I just described over a 7 or 8 year term, because we have over 60 sponsoring organizations. But because we wanted to get into these literacy-specific licensure programs faster and more deeply, we were able to use literacy launch funding and investments to cut that timeline in half to 4 years, hire staff, develop a deeper process. And as you'll see in the next part of this presentation, we're averaging about 40 individual program reviews a year now with that support. So in answer to your question, why 4 and not 3, or why 4 and not 8? It's a balancing act of capacity, funding, and what we can reasonably accomplish with the resources that we have, because those literacy-specific program reviews are actually more comprehensive and deeper than the typical overall formal review process, which I'm going to share a little bit more about in a moment, which might help.
Just one follow-up to understand. This is a totally kind of fabricated scenario. If the governor, I'm truly making this up, like if there was, not the governor, if there were more funds in the budget, have you bumped up for this? Have you bumped up against kind of operational reality, or this is kind of more or less as fast as you could do it. And I'm only asking kind of about literacy, this part of it, which is what the slide at the back of the presentation is about.
Yeah, I think more resources would allow us to do this even in a shorter period of time.
Thank you.
Dr. Smithy?
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I did have a question if there was available data around educators who do not engage in an EPP versus just entering the field through like a provisional license, and their success rate comparatively, or like how many educators attempt at an EPP but then are not successful?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just for clarification purposes, for those of you who need definition of the provisional license. So educators may teach on a provisional license for up to 5 years, and you may get a provisional license if you pass the relevant MTELs and have a baccalaureate degree. So you can teach on a provisional license without having attended or completed an approved sponsoring organization program. We haven't had research done comparing those two cohorts of teachers in a while, so I don't want to speak to that specific comparison, but I can tell you that the emergency license, which was passed during the COVID pandemic, did allow us to study the relationship between, or it allowed us to study how teachers on an emergency license were doing compared to how teachers on initial licenses were doing. And teachers on emergency license were able to teach without completing an educator preparation program as well. And we saw that while the first group of teachers on an emergency license performed comparably to teachers on an initial license who had completed an ed prep program, over time, teachers on an emergency license did not perform as well as teachers on an initial license. Students in those classrooms performed significantly worse, particularly in math and science. And I think that really started to signal the importance of educator preparation relative to teacher quality. And so we made the decision to end the emergency license. So that's our strongest data, Member Smitty, on the importance of educator preparation relative to teacher quality.
Thank you. Just before we move on, as a quick question, I don't know if anybody else has any questions, because I know Dr. Grant had asked maybe we could put the slides down, but I know we're going to go right into the next topic.
Yeah, I
But-
figured it out on my end.
Okay. Okay. I just had a question about, I get asked a lot whether or not the state continues to license programs that do not align with the science of reading. And what's the answer to that question? What's our plan on that question?
Well, actually, this might be a good transition.
Okay, very good.
Chair Craven, to this spotlight, because that is an update on our program review process for early literacy licensure programs.
And then I have a very basic question for you before we move on, which is, how does the state manage relicensure and professional development? Because that's been a question I've had over the years as well.
Okay.
Do
you want me to hold on that until we open it up for discussion?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. And I see one more hand up. Member Roca, did you want to jump in before I moved on?
Sure, thank you. Just a quick question on, and sorry, I have my camera off because my signal is unstable and I can't hear well when the camera's on. The probationary approval, I see that there were 29 elected to expire, and I have no doubt about this of wondering if there are that led to that we could be, and if
Unfortunately, Member Roca, you're going in and out. I wonder if it's possible to try once more, or maybe hold your question till the end, where I know we'll have a lot of time for discussion. Maybe the signal will be better. Okay, I'll move on, but I'm more than happy to answer the question about those who elected to expire, and I'll make a note. So we want to provide a quick update on early literacy program reviews, which have been underway for several years. Just for context again, our focus on early literacy and educator preparation dates back to the development of mass literacy, which includes multiple areas of investment in evidence-based early literacy, as you're well aware, from resource development to curriculum incentives and professional learning opportunities. Thanks in particular to the governor's investment in literacy launch, however, our work to advance evidence-based early literacy has been able to accelerate, particularly in educator preparation. Literacy Launch funding has supported accelerated program reviews, professional learning communities for faculty, resources and supports for faculty, and partnerships between districts and educator preparation providers to advance evidence-based literacy instruction. Today, I'm going to share a status update on the accelerated program reviews in particular, as they are central to the state's efforts to truly shift how teachers are prepared to teach evidence-based early literacy. I'm going to frame this update around the key findings from a 2024 summary report from this board's Special Committee on Pandemic Recovery and Literacy, and the recommendations made in support of stronger educator preparation in evidence-based early literacy. Today, you will hear how we are addressing almost all of the recommendations, including the establishment of program review criteria aligned to evidence-based literacy instruction, the acceleration of program reviews in literacy-specific licensure areas, and ongoing support for ed prep faculty and staff to meet these new expectations. So starting with the development of the program review criteria itself, in 2022, we partnered with higher education faculty and K-12 literacy experts to develop specific expectations for licensure programs teaching early literacy that were aligned to mass literacy. These criteria articulate expectations for coursework, field-based experiences, and partnerships with K-12 districts, and they cover all aspects of evidence-based literacy development, from language comprehension to foundational skills, reading comprehension, and writing. These requirements apply to elementary, moderate disabilities, and early childhood licensure programs, and they were made permanent in May of 2024 with the expectation that all of these programs will have aligned their courses of study and field-based placement practices to the new requirements starting in fall of 2024. So here you can see the timeline for these reviews. In order to accomplish this type of comprehensive program-specific review at both scale and urgency, we are relying heavily on literacy launch funding and investments. This has allowed us to shorten the timeline for program reviews to just 4 years, with an average of 30 to 50 programs undergoing a review every year. We are currently scheduled to review over 160 elementary, early childhood, and moderate disabilities licensure programs across 45 sponsoring organizations. The total number of programs may shift as some programs expire and others are added, but we are on track to maintain this pace and complete all necessary program reviews in literacy-specific licensure areas by 2028. Also recommended in the report, the program reviews aligned to these our program criteria focus specifically on features that are essential to strong preparation in literacy instruction. Specifically, we assess how closely aligned a program of study is to the new program approval criteria. We conduct course observations. We assess the quality of field-based placements and supervision in schools and classrooms, with special attention to the use of high-quality instructional materials in those clinical placements. And we require classroom observations of teacher candidates conducting lessons during literacy blocks to ensure that they are demonstrating evidence-based instructional practices. The accelerated literacy program reviews result in the same approval designations as the formal review process. However, these designations are made at the program level rather than at the organization level itself. If an individual licensure program receives a conditional approval status or a probationary approval designation, That program will be required to implement an improvement plan addressing those findings, and the department will return to assess its progress regularly. Programs on probation will only have 1 to 3 years to make the necessary changes, depending on the severity of the findings, and programs that are fully out of compliance will lose their approval status. All of these program-level literacy approval designations will be published on BESE's Public Profiles website, so it is easy for aspiring teachers as well as schools and districts to identify those programs that are truly preparing teachers in evidence-based early literacy instruction. Before I wrap up, I just want to note that as we put all of these new requirements in place, we knew from other states on similar paths that updating literacy-specific preparation requirements was essential, but not sufficient. We had to make it easy to do what we knew was going to be hard, and this meant putting in place multiple resources and supports for educator preparation organizations. For the past 3 years and continuing on for the next 3 years, we are providing professional learning communities and coaching for EdPrep staff and faculty on evidence-based literacy practices and course design. We are also in the 3rd year of our early literacy regional consortia grant program, which brings districts and EdPrep providers together to support the learning and growth of both teacher candidates and K-12 students in literacy. And we continue to develop and make available training programs, resources, and courses for EdPrep staff on evidence-based early literacy practices in an effort to advance and elevate their skills and expertise. If you have any further questions and want to learn more, our website is here, and you can read more about the programs that are underway. You can download the program approval criteria, and you can see the schedule for our early literacy program reviews. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen and open it up for questions.
Great. Any questions? Members can raise their hand. Oh, now I can see you all. Wonderful. Great presentation. Thank you. Any questions? Then maybe I can indulge myself with the question on the first question on what have been specifically, has there been a lot of pushback on trying to move towards a science of reading based for those programs that weren't teaching that? Is there a lot of is there a lot of issue in the field when you do this, or is it as simple as you shall follow and align with the curriculum frameworks and therefore?
So we've been signaling this for over 3 years. The program approval criteria was drafted in 2022 in partnership with faculty and K-12 literacy experts. In 2023, a draft was made publicly available, and it wasn't even put into place until 2024. So the runway has been long. So the programs that had the most work to do have had several years to start putting those pieces in place. And some of that work is pretty extensive if it requires a real shift in entire programs of study, curricula, and finding clinical placements that meet our requirements for our student teachers. So for the most part, I would say that programs are making the changes they need to make as they anticipate their reviews coming forward. And some of our programs that express some of the most resistance at first are actually making some of the biggest changes. There will still be some programs, I think, that dig in their heels, and I think that's when the accountability piece of this puzzle will really be important. And we're still in the first year of the program launches, so we haven't yet met that point, but I'm really optimistic about the changes we're already seeing in anticipation of these accelerated program reviews.
Great. And then I had a second question just about, so once you get your license, there's a lot of professional development time that the taxpayers are supporting through local contracts, right? So it's nothing that the state does, but it's definitely, in order to keep your license, the state does have that oversight, right?
Mhm.
Overall.
Yeah.
And over the years I've been involved with the board, I've been told different things, like basically we let the communities relicense teachers locally according to, like, I just don't know how that process works. So would you mind explaining that to me?
So this is where if Brian Devine were here, I'd probably toss it to him. So
Okay,
I will
we can, perfect to
I can
another
provide a
discussion
high
then.
level, but
I just
essentially,
felt that it was
yeah.
an adjunct to this discussion,
No,
which is like, we
yeah.
have a lot of emphasis at the board level for the many years I've been here on initial licensure, but it's the professional development and relicensure
Right.
that provides also an opportunity. So in other words, if a teacher needs to be receiving professional development in early literacy, how do we know that that's going to happen unless
Right.
there's this coordinated effort on relicensure?
Yeah, it's a great question. Right now, moving from an initial to a professional license requires an induction and mentoring program and a certain number of you can either complete what's called the 12 credit option, where you complete 12 credits of specific content coursework, or you can participate in an approved professional licensure program, which our sponsoring organizations can provide. The goal is to ensure that you're deepening your content-specific pedagogy in order to go from an initial to a professional license. That would include deeper content-specific skills and competencies in literacy, particularly in those licensure areas that I've already named. Once you have your professional license, you have to renew it, and that on a regular basis, and that renewal requires, I think, 120 PDPs. Member Smitty's nodding, she can probably spell this off for me as well. And those PDPs must be in certain categories of content and skill sets. And so that's the renewal, that's the professional licensure process and the renewal licensure process.
Thank you, Claire. Any other questions? We have a lot of experts on this call, so on the board. Yes, Dr. West.
You're on mute.
Marty, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. So I was interested in what you just shared about making the program review outcomes and ratings sort of visible to the public. And I'm curious about two things. Is that a new practice that we're doing for this area that we hadn't previously done with the institutional reviews? And then second, do we, and I guess we'd only know that if it is something we've done before, but do we see districts using that information to determine where they recruit candidates?
It's not new. We have always published our performance designations on public profiles, so you can look up any of our approved sponsoring organizations through public profiles, and in their profiles it lists their most recent approval designation. The early literacy specific program reviews will also be published at a program level. So anybody who looks this up will be able to see a sponsoring organization level approval designation as well as program specific approval designations. The extent to which districts use these to inform hiring decisions or partnership decisions likely varies. I can't speak specifically to individual districts. We encourage this. We have resources and guidance that encourages them to look it up when they're exploring partnerships or really investments in pipeline programs with educator preparation providers. And we do try to highlight it through our grant opportunities and our guidelines to districts around why it's so important to partner with educator preparation providers in pipeline development. But I'm sure the use of those designations varies.
Any other questions for Claire? Oh, Dr. Smitty?
Hi. I'm sorry, I guess from what I recall, the board or maybe was most concerned about how educators were engaging with these prep programs when the subject first came up, and making sure we were maintaining high standards, but also making the programs accessible and affordable and not frivolous. And I don't think I have enough information from this presentation about how educators are engaging with these programs. So can you speak a little more to that?
Yeah, I think I can answer one half of that question, and then if I'm happy for you to push more. One of the things that we prioritize in our oversight of sponsoring organizations is listening to candidates, listening to the student teachers. So we have a very robust set of quantitative and qualitative data collection that we engage in. We survey on an annual basis current teacher candidates and completers of all of our sponsoring organization programs. We conduct focus groups as part of our review processes. And we really try to collect information directly from student teachers and candidates around their experiences with these programs. And that is one of the most important pieces of evidence we use when we are engaging in a formal review of a program. Our goal is to ensure that all candidates are having an equitable experience in their licensure programs, that they're getting the coursework they need, the advising they need, the clinical placements they need, such that when they complete their program and are hired into a class, a school, or district, they feel confident and prepared to teach the kids in front of them. That's really what we're looking at. We're also looking at the extent to which our sponsoring organizations are soliciting a diverse array of candidates and are supporting their faculty to support those candidates through the entire program. I'm not sure if that specifically answers your question, Member Smitty, but that candidate experience is a crucial part of how we assess and evaluate a program's quality.
Yeah, I think, and I don't know, Member Smitty, if this is where you're getting at. I think there's opportunities around how do we look at incentives for students to enter into these programs. So I think, Helene, what Claire is describing is the support systems, which we want to be very attentive to. And that's still, that's an area also that we're going to continue to partner with our teacher prep programs. I do think it's fascinating that when the reviews are done, some of the colleges decide not to do them, right? Like they just can't meet the requirements. And by the way, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it creates another tension, right? About, how do we get more teachers in our pipeline? And I think that to me is a bigger question around incentives, the kind of scholarships that could exist, connecting, some of the things that, the Secretary and I are really passionate about: early college. How do we get more early college programs specifically to create educator pipelines? So I think for me, it really is more of making sure we have really strong programs that are really rigorous. And then within that, and then I love the fact what Claire said, how we really take into the candidate's voice in that and how they're feeling their experience going through it. And I think the other piece, which I feel like is a little bit in your question, is how do we make sure these programs are accessible? And accessible means everything from financial, incentives, which I think there is an opportunity, and I'm still learning more, I'm still learning about this, but I think this is an area where I think we need to look at, again, as a longer term investment.
Well, thank you, everybody. This was great. Thank you to Claire and to Erin. We're going to move on to the seal of biliteracy. There's a discussion and vote. Commissioner Martinez, take it away.
Thank you, Chairwoman. So next on our agenda item is we have two sets of regulations that are coming back for the board after public comment. So if you remember, board members, in October 2025, the board voted to solicit public comment on proposed amendments to the regulations and criteria for the seal of the state seal of illiteracy. The department invited public comment on the proposed regulatory changes from October 29th through December 5th of 2025. Based on the comments received, I'm recommending two additional changes up to the regulations. I will now invite our DESE staff to the table to present a summary of the public comment as well as the additional proposed changes to the regulation. So we have Allison Balter, who is our special advisor and director of the Office of Language Acquisition, and Joe Wakeland from our legal staff.
Thank you, Commissioner, Secretary, and members of the board. I'm just going to go ahead and share my slides here. Right. Can folks see the slides okay? All right, perfect. As the Commissioner mentioned, we're here to follow up on the proposed amendments to the state seal of biliteracy. I'm Allison Balter, and I'm joined here by my colleague Joe Wakeland from our legal team. And today, during this time, here's what we hope to do. We're going to provide a recap, a refresher on the proposed changes that we brought before you in October. Then we will summarize the public comment that we received around these changes. We will name the additional two minor changes that we're proposing in response to public comment, and then we'll take comments and questions from you all before a vote. So just to kind of backtrack a little bit and recap our conversation in October, you all voted to release the proposed amendments for public comment. As the Commissioner mentioned, the public comment period was open from October 29th through December 5th. The intent of these amendments originally was to align the seal of biliteracy regulations to the changes to the competency determination law. So really just sort of cleaning that up to bring it into alignment. But also we had some proposals to improve clarity, consistency, and procedures for districts around implementing the seal. And so I will just kind of recap what those involved. So in terms of clarifying the procedural amendments here, we proposed requiring annual written notice to families about the seal to make sure that students and families were accessing that option. Specifying that the seal must appear on a student transcript. And this was as opposed to giving districts the option to just put it on the diploma. The importance of having it on the transcript would allow for institutes of higher education to see and know that students received the seal. We proposed replacing the term foreign language with language other than English, a more equitable term, and to bring it up to alignment with our world language frameworks. And requiring that any language assessment for the world language component of this be taken during or after grade 8. So it truly is a measure of students' competency in the high school years. And then in terms of the English proficiency criteria, we proposed removing the outdated language and criteria that was tied to the former MCAS and CD regulations, so that cleaning up component. And then to do that, we sort of reframed those criteria and established 3 updated sets of criteria for the English proficiency component of the seal. Those criteria continue the use of the grade 10 ELA MCAS as a key and primary measure of English proficiency. That is in our state law and should remain. But it also allowed DESE to approve additional nationally recognized assessments of English language proficiency that would be aligned to MCAS performance levels to maintain and preserve the rigor of the seal, but also give flexibility as needed. And this is particularly for students who may come in later in the high school years or need additional flexibility. So we received over 40 public comments on these proposed regulations from a wide range of stakeholders, including educators and administrators, professional and advocacy organizations, as well as parents and community members. And overall, there's very strong support for these proposed changes. Strong support voiced for aligning the state law with the updated CD requirements, but also for the expanded flexibilities and clarity that we were proposing to include. Here are a few themes that really emerged in the public comment. So first, there were some comments regarding the implementation logistics for the transcripts, including the seal on transcripts. And I'll get to that a little more specifically because it connects to one of the changes we're proposing. There was strong overall support for the expanded assessment options that we proposed in terms of, giving DESE the flexibility around English proficiency assessments. There was also interest in clearer documentation of the languages in which students earn the seal. This is also connected to one of the changes we're going to propose, so I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. And finally, just a desire overall for stronger data reporting and transparency about the seal, about our students earning the seal, the languages they're earning it in, etc. So those public comments led us to propose two additional changes to the regulations. The first one, as I mentioned, is related to the transcript component, right? And what we heard from commenters was, great that we should include the seal by literacy on the transcript. That makes total sense. However, there can be some challenges logistically at times in getting an insignia printed on a transcript. And so people requested the flexibility to either include the insignia for the seal or add a line of text stating the student earned the seal and in which languages they earn the seal, so that could be easily communicated to institutions of higher education. So that seemed like a feasible flexibility to offer, and it addresses the concerns around formatting, but also ensures that the information is included on the transcript. So that is our first proposed change. And then our second proposed change, as I previewed, is around data reporting related to the seal. And so currently, our regulations require districts to report annually on which students earn the seal. So through SIMS, they report, did a student earn the seal, yes or no? But that doesn't account for, there's no opportunity there for them to indicate whether students earned multiple seals, for example, which some of our students do. They earn, 2, 3, 4 seals sometimes. And also the specific languages in which students earn the seal. And that we've heard over time, but definitely heard again in this public comment period, is really important data. We have such a range of diversity in terms of the languages that multilingual learners, our students and families here in Massachusetts speak. And so to be able to gather data on the languages in which students are earning the seal would be very important. So we do propose adding language to this section of the regulations, requiring districts to report annually both which students earn the seal and in which languages they earned it. So those are the two additional changes we're proposing, and I would love to open it up to questions and comments from the board.
Thank you. Any questions for Allison? Or Helene? Oh, there we go. Vice Chair Hills.
This is clear, all that. I had one question I wanted to ask on something that did not come out of public comments, was a change already proposed, and that's the alternatives to the grade 10 MCAS. I get, I understand for MTEL, for example, there's good data on some on sort of disproportionate impact on certain racial, ethnic, and income groups, and that there's a reason we did a pilot and considered alternatives. The question I have here is, if it's aligned to the grade 10 MCAS standards, what's the reason for looking for alternatives, and what kind of process will you go through in assessing alternatives?
Yeah, that's a great question, and something that we have been discussing as well. So I think, these alternatives would be things that we would be using for very specific needs or cases, right? It wouldn't be sort of an overall, alternative to the MCAS. But for example, currently, right, if students are taking the MCAS in the 10th grade, and we have students who arrive after that administration of the MCAS, they arrive in 11th grade, they arrive in 12th grade, or, perhaps we have a newcomer student who arrives in 9th grade and is still building their English proficiency and may not be at a place yet in the 10th grade where they're demonstrating that on the 10th grade MCAS, but may be at a point later on in their high school career where they could demonstrate that proficiency. And so, given that there are, fewer opportunities for them to take that 10th grade MCAS, and there may be, need for additional flexibilities, additional assessments that they could demonstrate that proficiency on. And so we recognize, of course, that, that isn't something that would be a quick and easy, determination. We would want to build in through our guidance development a clear process by which we are looking at which assessments might meet those criteria and getting input on those assessments from stakeholders, and ensuring that indeed we feel that there is strong enough alignment to use that as an alternative. So we would be building that process moving forward if this were approved.
So that's a clear answer. Thank you. I want to just follow up, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm trying to kind of repeat back to you what I think I heard you say. The issue with MCAS, with creating alternatives to MCAS, is about kind of the logistics or problems with making the 10th grade MCAS available, other than, kind of like after 10th grade, after someone's in grade 10. It's not primarily driven by finding alternative measures of assessment for someone who otherwise would be able to take the MCAS. Have I overstated that or said it correctly?
No, I think that's a correct summary. Yep.
Well, thank you for making it clear for me then. So, okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other comments before we go for the vote? If not, I'll ask Helene to call the roll. Oh, wait, do I need a motion? Sorry.
I'll make a motion, but I'll make a quick comment as we do, which is I think it's good that we're addressing this issue now, both because we had to get alignment with the new standards, but also because one of the recommendations of the Graduation Council has been to think about additional opportunities for earning seals. And so we need to have the infrastructure in place and the policy approach in place in order to be able to do that. And I think it's especially good that we are strengthening reporting requirements and creating a norm where we'll be able to track this stuff. So I move that we adopt the regulations as revised.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion before we go for the roll call? Hearing none. Helene, please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Craven. Member Chamberlain?
Yes.
Member Fisher?
Yes.
Member Grant?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hills?
Yes.
Member Mohammed? Okay. Member Hasha? I know she was having technical difficulties. Member
Well, like she said, yes. I don't want to speak for her, but yep, she did.
Oh, yeah, there she is.
Okay, great. Thank you. Member Smitty?
Yes.
Member Stewart?
Aye.
Member West?
Yes.
Chair Craven?
Yes.
Secretary Tutwiler?
Yes.
Member Mohammed? Just go back. Did someone hear her, or it's just me? Okay. The motion passes.
Thank you, Helene.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Excellent job. Thanks, Allison and Joe. And up next, we have student records amendments to our regulations, discussion and vote.
Thank you, Chairwoman. So another regulation, board members, that's coming back to you is in October 2025, the board also voted to solicit public comment on proposed amendments to 603 CMR 23.02, the definition of transcript in the regulations on student records. The department invited public comment on the proposed regulatory changes from October 29th through December 5th of 2025. So if you remember, board members, and I'll invite Rob to answer questions. This is us just removing the MCAS requirement, right, Rob, that from the transcript as a graduation requirement and replacing it with the minimum competency determination. And so we didn't get any feedback on this. There wasn't anybody that questioned the changes. So we don't have a presentation, board members, because that's basically would be it. That's all we would tell you. But again, Rob is available for any questions on it itself. So I don't know, Rob, do you want to add something, and then board chair, then again we would open up to questions and then for your consideration.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, board members. So just a reminder, this was a very technical change to the definition of the word transcript in our student records regulations, mainly to account for the change in the competency determination law. So we added the words high school to the MCAS test as opposed to talking about the competency determination. And then we did two other small things while we were here. One was to use more inclusive terminology around gender. We removed the words his and her and talked about the student as opposed to his and her. And then the last thing we did was leave ourselves an opening so we don't have to keep coming back here related to additional seals that the department may endorse in the future that would just would fall under this definition as opposed to us having to come back every time and change the definition for each specific seal. So about as technical as the changes, small technical changes we make. And again, as the commissioner said, we received no public comment and are recommending moving forward with the change in the definition as we originally presented to you.
Okay, any questions or comments? If not, do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to approve the proposed amendments on this regulation for transcripts.
Thank you. In a second?
Second.
Okay, and I'll move to the roll call.
Okay, very good. Member Chamberlain?
Yes.
Member Fisher?
Yes.
Member Grant?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hills?
Yes.
Member Mohammed?
I know she's
I saw
actually
her.
on.
Okay, I
Yeah.
saw her come on.
We'll put her at the end if she can hop back on.
Okay, Member Asha? I know she's having technical difficulties.
She's a yes.
Member
She's
Smitty?
recorded in writing.
She did. Okay, great.
There you go.
Okay, Member Smitty?
Yes.
Member Stewart?
Aye.
Member West?
Yes.
Chair Craven?
Yes.
Secretary Tutwiler?
Yes.
Member Mohammed, coming back to you in case you can.
And
join
when
us.
by the way, I know she has spotty service, sort of like
Mhm.
Member Harsha. So when she comes back on, I'll ask her just to be recorded on both votes, so that way she can express some continuity.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank
Can
you.
you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Now I
can.
can hear you. Yes.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Okay. Yes on both votes.
Yes, we got you.
Sorry,
And
okay.
we saw your notes typed in there, Member Harsha. So that was great. And I think Member Mohammed, when we get her, I'm just going to ask her to record that.
Okay. Unanimous vote, the motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, now moving on to our penultimate item of the Commissioners' Performance Evaluation Committee. I'm going to hand this over to Vice Chair Hills, who chairs that committee and has for several years.
Thanks, Catherine. And just a quick summary and the setting of the scene. There's 4 members of the committee, Erica, Kristen, Marty, and myself. And what I'm going to do is just quickly summarize this. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Any other comments that other members of the committee want to give should feel free at any point to interrupt or give comments at the end, and then we could take any questions. So first of all, let's talk about how we're using this. It's a little unusual to come out with this in basically the middle of the school year, slightly past the middle. Commissioner started during the summer. And so what we're doing now is not so much setting up goals with very specific objectives. I think with the commission, with very specific quantitative targets, I think what the commissioner is trying to do is set up the department, set himself up for a longer term game plan. And I think that's what's reflected in the goals that are in here. What we want to do when we get to May and June is have some basis that we all agree is how we're going to look at this and say, okay, was the commissioner's first year? Is he off to a good start? Where are there issues or not? And that's really the purpose of this. So, which means we will come back to the board in June with or maybe even May with a draft assessment. So this is about setting expectations so that we can have that conversation. I've reviewed this with the commissioner, and commissioner is on board with all of this, which shouldn't be a huge shock since the 5 policy goals, which is one of the 4 buckets, are the 5 key things key priorities that he brought to us at the December meeting. So couple of other quick comments. I wanted to say, as I said, I'm not going to read each of the goals, but I have, just to describe it, 4 different buckets: policy, the DESE organization, board and governance, and stakeholder relationships. As I said, these are the 5 key objectives that he presented to us in December. I want to make comments on the first couple of goals under policy. The achievement goal, this is what at least I think of as the most central objective for the commissioner, not just for this year, but really setting himself up for the next few years. This is the whole process he's engaging in now on student achievement, particularly focusing ultimately on districts where we can, to use that expression, move the needle fairly quickly. What the commissioner is going to do is come back to us as when he has that plan ready. It'll be before the end of the year with a description of the buy-in he's gotten from the districts. There's a fair number of districts and schools that are going to be involved here. What the strategies are, and what DESE's role is going to be, what the role of certain districts will be, and what the metrics are that we should have. If I could describe this in a very simple, non-technical way, this is like a key thing that we've wanted and been waiting for a while. And I don't just mean from this commissioner, I mean for a while, to address the real kind of educational achievement issues that we're having in this state, notwithstanding an overall ranking that sort of seems really good. So again, this is about him coming back with metrics and the whole plan, but this is a key part of it. And I think of this as not just exciting from the board, it's helping to position DESE to really work well with districts on a very large scale, in a very positive, collaborative way to move the needle. And so he'll come back on that. Second comment, statewide graduation standard. I just wanted to be clear, and I had raised this issue with Secretary Tutwiler. This is not kind of me suggesting the board has approval rights on whatever the graduation, whatever the recommendation ultimately will be as it's finalized. But realistically, there's going to be a lot of regulations that probably come with it. Some of which we can do now, some of which we might need legislation for. So whatever it means when I say receive board support, it's just acknowledging that we should all more or less be on the same page and not have a dysfunctional situation as regulations come back to us to discuss and approve. The other 3, I think, kind of follow a format of come back with a plan, with metrics, the role of DESE, the role of districts, that's student attendance, literacy, and teacher pipeline. The second bucket, DESE organizational structure, the commissioner has already put out sort of pretty significant, what I think of as a pretty significant change. Congratulations again to Lauren and Rob on the promotion. And there's some other internal promotions and some in an external hiring process. So he will come back to us when that's final or near final. And I think that's a critical thing for the new commissioner. You're using kind of organizational changes to set yourself up to deliver what you want to deliver going forward. Let's see how it's going. Board and governance, I don't think there's metrics that I've proposed here, but I think there's collaborative relationships that have been developed with Secretary Tutwiler. This is a great chance for you, Secretary, to say, no, that's wrong. It's not collaborative, but it sure seems that way. And that's obviously critical for any commissioner, as well as with the board. And finally, stakeholder relationships, which are always a continuing priority for the commissioner. So kind of one side of one page, 4 buckets, key policy goals that reflect the priorities the commissioner brought to us. And my colleagues on the committee have anything to add? If there are any questions from the board, we're happy to take them.
Yeah, and again, I think one of the more underdeveloped elements of the goals is the relationship with the board and sort of how we move forward. And again, we had planned on having a board retreat in the fall, but this is actually a better time coming up in the winter that we've had some time together and that Commissioner Martinez has had some time in Mass. So I'm going to be renewing everybody's calendars for that call. And I think we can take more time on that day to specifically flesh out some of the bigger picture, longer standing issues that we want to talk about as a board with Commissioner Martinez, right? So with your indulgence, I think that's a good way of getting at the board goal as well.
I do think it's worthy to add educators under stakeholder relationships.
I would agree, and I think we can amend that, right, Matt?
So yeah, let me give a reaction to that. I'm not opposed to, obviously, like we need the commissioner to have relationships with educators. Just like the head of any organization has to have relationships with people in the organization. What I want to be sensitive to is there are superintendents who have principals, who have department heads. That's kind of an organization structure. And while it's almost unobjectionable that the commissioner should have relationships with educators, this is not a laundry list of who we should have relationships with. But I also don't want to signal we expect them to go out and work with superintendents while, he also has as a key priority speaking with lots of educators under those superintendents, under the principals, under the department chairs. I may be oversensitive to this point. In my world, that would be a really, really key issue. So I don't know. I'm giving you my reaction to it. It's not like I deliberately didn't put educators in, but I'm thinking of what's the level at which the commissioner should be sort of interacting with often, and heads of organizations, superintendents, community groups. I'm not going to overstate it, but that's my sensitivity on this point.
So maybe I can help a little bit. So, one of the things, board members, that we are very intentional about is, as I'm visiting districts and schools, and I've been now at over 50 districts, schools, towns since the school year started. Almost in every one of those, we have a convening of teachers, and we have a convening, and we let the school pick. And usually it's the teacher leaders, it's the department chairs if it's a high school. But again, we don't choose. We let the principal and the superintendent decide that, and we actually hear their voice. And really, I always lead with, what can the agency do more to support you? What are some things that we can really, work partner on, either on whether, and so you can imagine things go. So to that extent, that is part of the relationship building that we're doing. So I think what Vice Chair Hills is stating is the way we're going to be the most effective as an agency is making sure that we're working with our district leaders and organizational leaders, but through them, we also will find ways to partner around how to support our teachers, our different levels. I mean, we work with a lot of the leadership level, whether it's our special ed leaders, our multilingual leaders. So again, there's just different ways to get there. So if that helps, I mean, I think educator kind of for me is a bigger bucket because I think our superintendents are educators as well. And with that, we also, I also connect with the labor unions every month. So this is not, I think the goal is just making sure we have a clear coherence of what the North Star is. And that's, especially Chairwoman Craven, when we get into our retreat, I mean, I want to really talk a lot about that is what is our North Star for the board and for the agency? Because the one thing that I want you to understand in all these goals, one of the things that's a non-negotiable for me is having coherence. And that is an area that we struggle with in the agency right now is coherence and what is our North Star? And that is for me, the non-negotiable is that we have to have that clarity. And so that's why I think the timing of the board retreat will also help us a lot, just to all of us ground ourselves on that North Star and coherence. So that way, whatever metrics you put, and this is a long-term, game for me, then we can be really clear that we all have the consistent North Star and the consistent definition of what success will be.
Kristen, I don't want to just move past it. I don't know whether you're comfortable, uncomfortable with it. So
I understand what you're saying and agree. I just don't want people who haven't been privy to this conversation to misunderstand the omission of educators in this document. I think it's important to just signal that educators' voices are heard, as the commissioner is already doing. So I don't think it's asking him to do more. I just think it's noting somewhere that those relationships are valued. So it could be adding community, educator, and parent organizations, considering the commissioner's meeting with educator organizations monthly, he said. So not to ask more, but just to be transparent and valuing those relationships.
I as long as we all understand, I don't have that much of an objection. I would just add, superintendents, school leaders, educators, and community and parent organizations, and leave it at that. I mean, I'm not trying to overstate. I'm not trying to say, oh, you shouldn't be talking to teachers. That's not at all the point. But we all understand, and especially given your explanation, sort of what you're doing, I'm not going to ask for a vote on an amendment. Are folks comfortable with that, or are there any objections to me just adding, superintendents, at the bottom, superintendents, school leaders, educators, and community and parent organizations?
I think it's generally good.
Hearing
Yeah,
no
add that.
objection. Sorry,
No.
Mary Ann, go ahead.
Yeah, add it.
Okay.
I have no objections.
So for the folks at DESE, I'll make that change, and then I'll to this page, and then I'll get it back to you all for final distribution to the board, and we'll look at this again at the in the middle and end of the spring.
Vice Chair Hills, I just want to call out, you've got a hand up before we move on. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, Christina.
No worries. Can you restate the timing on when we would see the plan? Were you saying end of calendar year or end of school year?
My understanding is it will be, and the commissioner can speak to this, but before the end of the school year.
Yeah, Commissioner, can you weigh in? That's a long time from now. So
Yeah,
could you weigh in on something? I don't want to wait until next December.
Yeah, no.
School
So
year, not calendar year.
No, it's school year. So let me break down the
Okay.
components that are happening. So this is a good important clarification. So for example, our initiative around accelerating student achievement, this is a partnership that's really we're working with districts at scale. By the end of the school year, because I want ownership at the local level, there will be multi-year school improvement plans, district improvement plans that will be aligned. I will bring you summaries of that. And so that's just part of the process that's built in terms of as us working with the districts through the end of the school year that will create a multi-year set of improvement plans that will be very coherent, very aligned, multi-year, that will be really easy for the public as well as for you to all of us to be able to monitor. And by the way, this will create a lot of coherence in the agency because it will ground us of how we do our work. So that's one example. As you know, the agency is going through the largest reorganization that, at least from talking to my team, that we've ever done. We have right now 5 out of 7 senior associate commissioners that we are hiring for. It's the largest reorg we've ever done. And of course, that leadership will also be able to make changes as well. And so that is going through right now. I thank you to the secretary and his team for helping us with this because it's not easy to navigate a state process. It's my first time. So, like there's many, it's very different at the district level than it is at the state level. I'll just leave it at that. But we've gotten here. And so now we're really, and this is about culture shift. This is about really, really grounding and really being clear about our culture, being grounded around our North Star. Again, I think the retreat will also just reinforce that when we have that next month. And so that is working through right now. So we're literally in the process. The team is literally now working with the HR team around resumes and screening and all of that. That's happening as we speak. So that process, Christine, will continue through these next few months. At the same time, we're creating a strategic plan for the agency that will also create the coherence. So that again, all of this is in process, to get through the end of the school year. And then the other initiatives, for example, the literacy bill is a great example, right? So it's very tied to now our literacy initiative exists with or without the literacy bill, but I'm anticipating the literacy bill will be passed, which will add another really great layer or implementation around our just best practices in literacy. So when we're going to be developing along with the budget, along with what happens with that bill, again, a comprehensive plan, multi-year around how we're going to continue to reinforce really our efforts around literacy. So those are just examples. The grad standards, as the secretary knows, we literally have the implementation committees right now working for us to be advisory, to provide more details to a June report that's going to be coming, that will be coming soon. So all these things are coalescing so that by the end of the school year, we have to have multiple plans in place. And that's why I said, board members, for me, one of the non-negotiables is we got to have coherence and we got to have a clear set of North Stars because, it's a lot of work for the agency to undertake, but the goal is to really, with all the changes we made, to position us to be able to really have, these goals, not only for next year, but longer term as well, multi-year goals.
Okay.
Christina, are you good? Do you want to discuss this more? Or?
I'm good in general. I don't feel the need to kind of wordsmith what we're voting on. I think the question for me is when are we rescheduling the board retreat? And we probably should do it after some of these goals have been achieved and settled, et cetera. So we have something to build on. I'm trying to think of what is the right mid-year update. How do you frame that? I don't think it needs to be framed in this language. And then how do we close the year with another type of update? But I actually think that is far more our behavior as a board than it is necessarily tied to the commissioner's goals. And so I think it's separate. I think we need a retreat if we're going to have the expectations to land kind of all of these planes and know in June a set of understandings of where we are as we think about restarting the school year and then getting to December and then rinsing and repeating. I'd like to live in a world where there's a mid-year update of some sort and then the annual conversation around performance.
Okay, very good.
I guess I would, my only follow-up to that is for the chair, not to put you on the spot and say anything now, but Christina kind of raised an issue around timing of a retreat, which cannot possibly be your favorite thing to talk about, having had trouble scheduling and rescheduling.
I think Helene could help us as long as the board members, I think March is probably a good time because it's better than what we had planned for the fall, honestly, because it would have been getting to know us and getting to know the state at the same time. And now that Commissioner Martinez has been here for a little bit and has some experience, and in particular, I feel an opportunity where there are so many of those senior leadership positions out there that if Commissioner Martinez has an idea of sort of where we want organizationally the place to go and what kind of cultural norms should be there, that will help inform who he brings in. So I think as soon as possible, to the answer to your question, Matt, maybe like after school vacation when in March and before the end of the school year, obviously. So I think Friday mornings or Friday afternoons tended to work for people, and we're just gonna take a look again to see if we can get that time set up. So sorry, Helene, but we're back at it.
So we do have February 25th on folks' calendars for the board
Okay.
retreat. Am I hearing that that date is not?
Nope, you're not. I'm just saying, I'm not sure we publicized that, so
This
February
is,
25th.
I think this is probably a good conversation for Catherine to first have offline with the commissioner, like, because the issues that Christina raised wasn't around the timing per se. It was around the timing kind of being tied in some way to the things that are coming back to us in the spring. And I mean, the timing, I know there's kind of issues. We're not going to have perfect attendance at the end of February anyway. And the issue Christina raised is kind of above that, which is that really the optimal timing? So that's what I meant when I said I don't want to put you on the spot now, Catherine. This is kind of the conversation for you to have offline with the commissioner.
I just think an initial read and then we can come back to some of the specifics, but we haven't even had that initial deeper dive with the commissioner yet as a board, so. I think the 25th of February is on, if that's on everybody's calendars.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm great.
Okay. All right, so are we voting on this document?
We can vote on the document unless there's any other comment with the change, the addition of the word educators that I'll get back in a final document to be distributed.
So move.
Second?
Second.
Okay, Helene, please call the roll.
Okay, I'm happy to. Member Chamberlain?
Yes.
Member Fisher?
Yes.
Member Grant?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hills?
Yes.
Member Mohammed? I don't see her on. Member Hasha?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to abstain just because I could not follow throughout the conversation because of the signal. So I just think it makes sense for me to abstain, but only because of that reason.
Very good. So noted. Member Smitty?
Yes.
Member Stewart?
Aye.
Member West?
Yes.
Chair Craven?
Yes.
Secretary Tutwiler?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. That great conversation. And thank you, Vice Chair Hills, for chairing that committee. And finally, our last topic on the budget. Our cleanup hitter, Bill Bell, back by popular acclaim. Commissioner, I'll let you tee it up.
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. So everyone, a lot's going on with the budget. This is my first time going through a state budget process again, very different than district budgets, FYI. So now I feel like I'm that kid who now is like, oh, this is what it looks like on this side. Because as a district leader, Secretary, we see it a certain way. And so now I will share just to help Bill a little bit. We're not going to share with you all detailed numbers because, as was said earlier, the governor actually will present her detailed budget tomorrow, I believe, right, Secretary? And so really we wanted to do, just board members, is just to give you a high level update of the budget process itself. And then to let you know, we will be giving you a detailed memo, shortly after the governor's address with all the details of the budget, because we have, we've been crunching a lot of numbers. And so the good news is that, we are, in a good place in terms of all the data that we've received, because you can imagine, I always kid about this. Our Commonwealth loves complexity. And by the way, I like it too, because you have to be thoughtful when you're complex. So, so we have a lot of different formulas. We have a lot of different variables that have to be, that have to be considered when it comes to the budget. So I'll ask our CFO to give us a high level update, but know that a very detailed memo is going to be coming to you soon, as soon as once the governor has a chance to release her full budget, and then the process really starts. Almost like a little short marathon with the legislature begins and with the budget process. Bill?
Thank you, Commissioner, and good morning, members of the board. Good to see all of you on screen. I guess we're just a day early. If we were Thursday, we would be able to roll through sort of what the governor is about to release, but don't want to get ahead of the chief executive's announcement. So, as the commissioner said, we have been hard at work through the fall. We go back sort of from the budget cycle perspective. We spent the fall, we met with the board budget committee, discussed priorities, interwoven with sort of key initiatives the commission was looking to advance. Had discussions with the Executive Office of Education as well as the Executive Office for Administration and Finance. It's all culminated in what the governor will announce tomorrow. I think it's fair to say that the continued investment in the public K-12 sector in Massachusetts will be witnessed in this budget. This Commonwealth has a strong tradition of supporting public education, and I would expect that to continue in the release tomorrow. As the commissioner said, we'll have the details out to you as soon as the budget's released, and we create the summary memo and the companion spreadsheet you're used to seeing. So that's soon to follow. Just for folks who are a little unfamiliar, I know we're folks who are very familiar with this process who sit on this board, but really next steps after tomorrow would be the governor will actually file the legislation. It's a bill that will be referred to the House clerk and ultimately to the House Ways and Means Committee. That committee will start its development of the recommendations to be presented before the full House. That timeline, I'll talk about the timeline in a sec. That process will then repeat itself in the Senate with once the House votes and enacts the draft, its version of the budget, the draft legislation. It'll go to the Senate and the Senate Ways and Means Committee, and they will do what they do, which is produce a bill with the Senate's approach to the 27 spending plan. What we'll see next in terms of a process point is in March. Generally in March, last year was March 24th of 2025. There's a joint Ways and Means committee that forms. Back in the day, there used to be two separate. A House Ways and Means Committee would hold public hearings, and the Senate would. The legislature, I think, smartly decided, well, why don't we combine that into one event? So there'd be a joint Ways and Means committee budget hearing. They'll be across the board in terms of the topical areas of state spending, but there'll be one particularly focused on the education sector. Secretary Tutwiler, along with his respective commissioners, will present effectively the governor's budget to the committee. It also generally brings in a component of local aid, municipal officials, mass municipal, school superintendents, other professional organizations come to that hearing. So that would be your next that's the next piece we'll be readying for. Besides all the staff work that goes on, obviously committee members, the staff of the respective committees start to ask a number of questions and have a lot of data requests that we'll fulfill over the course of the next few months. So a joint Ways and Means hearing in March. We'll look for April for the House Ways and Means Committee to release its version of the budget, and then a floor debate on the House floor, culminating with, as I said, the House bill sometime in later April, generally right around April vacation week, a little after that. Then we roll into May, and the Senate will do similar process, and that culminates plus or minus right around Memorial Day, generally a little ahead of the Memorial Day holiday. And June and July is all about reconciling the two different proposals from both the House and Senate, producing a consolidated, consensus bill to present it to the governor. And the governor will then, along with her team, will review and ultimately sign the bill into law, and then we'll be off and running with 27 spending, and soon to start developing what would be the 28 plan. So tomorrow, governor will release the budget. Sure, there'll be a lot of stories that you'll read about. We'll come in behind that with you, specifically with a memorandum and companion tracking sheets to show you the appropriations. So that's where we're at, Commissioner. I don't have a whole lot more to add for the members right now.
Thank you. That was our last agenda item for today. Thanks to everybody for your flexibility, especially the staff and Commissioner Martinez at BESE. We're going to reconvene for our next regular meeting on February 24th. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, I see two notifications. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you, board members. Thank you.
Bye.